Hi, it's Mike Gastineau here for Swinomish Casino and Lodge, one of the title sponsors for iconic Sonics and a great place to get away from the hustle and bustle of Seattle. Just an hour north of the Emerald City and just outside of Anacortes on Highway 20. Beautiful views of Padilla Bay and Mount Baker and fast-paced gaming. Great entertainment, terrific food, a perfect getaway place for you and your friends, the Swinomish Casino and Lodge. When you need your next getaway, go to SwinomishCasinoandLodge.com. Tell them Mike Gastineau sent you, and be sure to check out the Iconic Sonics podcast and our great conversation with several Seattle Supersonics from the past, the present, and the future.
Truth Plus Media.
Iconic Sonics, and welcome to our program. It's all brought to you by Swinomish Casino and Lodge and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. And the folks at Swinomish Casino and Lodge and at Dick's said, can we get somebody else besides Gas to be on this show because he's wearing us out? And so we offered, Eldridge Recasner has appropriately called this a 10-day contract. He had a couple of those in his 9-year NBA career, but Eldridge Recasner joins the team. You know, we talked to you few weeks ago, we had so much fun. I said, let's get this guy on more often and kind of triangulate some of the conversations. I'm always a believer, the more the merrier. But your broadcast career, you've had some great things happen in this past year, and you're doing more college games. You did some NIT stuff for ESPN, and it's neat to see you growing, man. And it's great to have you as part of the show. Thanks.
Thank you guys for having me, man. I'm looking forward to it. Couldn't ask for a better first guest than my man Derrick McKey.
Derrick, it's great to see you again. Gosh, it's been a long time and a long time since Seattle fans thought of you as a Sonic. Hard to believe you got to go back to 92, 93, your last year with the team. And of all things, I'm watching NBA TV last night, and they're showing one of those Suns Sonics games from that terrific playoff series. We'll get to this later. You played in two of the most memorable Game 7s, I think, in NBA history. And you played in some huge games for the Pacers and some big games for the Sonics as well. Eldridge, talk about how you told me you met Derrick when you were still in college, right? When he first got here is when you met him. How did you guys get to know each other? Yeah,
Derrick got drafted by the Sonics in 1987. In 1987-88, his rookie year was my sophomore year at the UW. And I remember meeting Derrick and Olden Polynice. They were cool with a friend of mine, a guy named Pierre Crockwell. And I think that's how I met him. And Derrick became really good friends with one of my really good friends, Bruce Lloyd. You know, B. Lloyd used to work for United Airlines back in the day. And that's how that was my introduction to Derrick. And back then, the Sonics used to come over to the University of Washington and play with us. But we also would all play, all the pro guys. I wasn't in the NBA at that point, but all the pro guys would play over at the Bellevue Pro Club over in Bellevue with a guy named Steve Gordon. So got to know Derrick pretty good.
How'd Steve Gordon become such a basketball guy, Derrick? I mean, the guy was like, not that I'm some athlete, but Gordon, you wouldn't look at him and think this guy is a basketball junkie, but he was. What kind of guy was? I think you guys called him the Hat Man. What was Steve Gordon like?
I think it's tough to describe Steve, but he had a knack of getting all the guys together and enough guys together, and we used to have some good runs up at the pro club. So I think he knew how to cater to everybody with all the different personalities and all the different guys who played up there, because you had high school guys, you obviously had college guys and professional guys, and just incorporating and allowing everybody to get along and play together, I think was one of the things that he was good at.
And Eldridge, who was he? How did Steve Gordon get into the mix? Just a basketball guy? Just a guy who played a lot?
He was a baseball catcher, and he had the gift of gab. He's not gonna like this, but I think he's the greatest con man of all time. he just had a gift of gab, man, and he knew all the guys. And I agree with Derrick 100%. He was the best at putting runs together. I mean, it was NBA runs in the offseason over there at the Bellevue Pro Club. I think it started with guys would go over there, gas to rehab. Guys like Derrick, Nate McMillan, X-Man, Detlef, all those guys would go over there to rehab when they were injured. And he just started putting together runs, and before you knew it, it was the best runs in the summertime. I was one of the young, best players at UW, so he would let me run with the pro guys. And that's how it all started. But we call him the Hat Man because he had a ball spot they didn't want anybody to see, so he would wear a baseball cap all the time, a hat. I think X-Man might have been the one to give him that nickname, the Hat Man, but it still sticks with him till today.
Derrick, what was it like when you got to Seattle? You were a kid from a small town in Mississippi. You played college ball at Alabama. Now, certainly at Alabama, you traveled and you saw some things, but all of a sudden you're picked up and you're moved across the country to Seattle. What was that? Was that a difficult move at first? Was there some, just trying to adjust to being so far away from home? What do you remember about that first year?
It was somewhat difficult, and you're right by me moving all the way across, all the way across the world. But I think after getting there and being around some of those guys early on really helped me in the transition. I got to know X early on, and I think Dale Ellis may have been there also. And this was early on. This was before the season started, and we started playing pickup. So I got to know some of the guys then. But that made the transition easier. X being from down south, Dale also. So just being around those guys and being able to communicate and learn stuff from them definitely helped in the transition.
Eldridge, did your Southern background, and that must have been something you guys used to bond over because you were doing the same thing Derrick was doing. You're a Southern guy who's coming up to Seattle to go to college. You had that in common. Talk about getting to know him a little bit.
Well, I knew Derrick before I actually met him because being from New Orleans, I was a fan of the SEC. LSU was big in basketball back then. Alabama was loaded, man. I want Derrick to talk about it because I remember Bud Johnson, who I think Derrick played with for 1 year, but they had Bobby Lee hurt, I think the year before that. But they just talk about, because, yes, I want you guys to know I'm a friend, but I'm also a fan because Derrick was one of the most versatile players. I remember him guarding me at the pro club at 6'9", 6'10". I'm 6'3". He ain't supposed to be able to stay in front of a point guard, but he's guarding me smiling because that's how good he was defensively, and he was just so damn long with those.
Yeah.
People didn't talk about wingspan back then. But they talk to me about some of the guys on your Alabama team, man, because when I was doing my research, I didn't realize you played with Mark Gottfried, who coached at UCLA and Georgia. And then pretty boy Jim Farmer, man. I had no idea you and Jim Farmer played together. So talk about the guys you played with at Alabama.
Man, I played with, we had a lot of talent come through right before me and after me. A lot of guys came out of Alabama. You mentioned Bobby Lee Hurt and Enos Watley was there before me.
Enos Watley, yeah.
T.R. Dunn before me. And then obviously, like I said, Jim Farmer, Mark Gottfried, and Terry Connor was our point guard, who was one of the best point guards that I played for. Didn't make it in the league, played overseas for a long time. Keith Askins, Mike Ansley, and all those guys were on the same team. Everybody played in the league. So we had a nice little squad. We only played 7 guys, but we still had a pretty good squad. And then after that, it's just a list of guys: Freewell, Horry, Hollywood Robinson, Mo Williams. So we've had a lot of guys come through, and seems like we're starting to pick it back up too, because they got some talent coming through there. And I think Coach Oates is doing a pretty good job as far as getting that talent in there. It's tough to win without talent.
You're from Meridian, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Who else recruited you besides Alabama? I mean, I know you were the man because I'm from Louisiana. I ain't never been to Meridian, man, but I'm imagining Meridian is just a little small. I'm ghetto and I'm country, but you are all country being from Meridian. I see on the map is where I-20 and I-59 meet, but talk about, coming out of high school, who else recruited you besides Alabama?
Oh yeah, definitely a small town. All the schools in the state, so Southern Miss, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and probably, South Alabama at one time before they changed coaches. Obviously Alabama, University of Cincinnati. There's some other ones thrown in there, but I wouldn't say not highly recruited, but recruited enough, I guess. And Alabama's close enough. I really like Mississippi State. They stopped recruiting me after I didn't sign my first signing date, so they stopped recruiting me. A couple of other schools shot themselves in the foot. So Alabama slides in, and it was probably the best decision that I've made.
So you signed with Alabama. We fast forward a little bit to your junior year when you decided to come out, but you're the SEC's Player of the Year. Like I said, Jim Farmer was on your team, Mark Godfrey. Now you got drafted number 9 overall by the Sonics. Was that the place you wanted to go, or it just happened that way?
I didn't anticipate dropping to 9. During the little process that you go through before the draft or whatever, I think I met with a few of the teams in the league. I actually was visiting Chicago, and Bernie was on his way back from somewhere, and he actually stopped in Chicago. We had lunch. He was like, I don't think you'll be there when we pick, but I just wanted to meet you because I was in his area, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up dropping to 9 for the Sonics. So the night before, the Clippers told my agent that they were going to take me 4. So, we was thinking 4. So as the draft comes around, the 4th pick goes, they took Reggie
Williams from Georgetown. Yeah.
Reggie Williams. So I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. So as I started to drop, I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but okay. So a lot of those guys I didn't know. I was like, okay, that got it. So end up being picked by the Sonics. And like I said, that was probably the best position I could go. One of the better teams I could go to. Clippers may not have been a good deal for me. They struggled over the years, and back then that organization weren't the best. So I think I landed where I was supposed to land, and the rest is history.
Well, D, I'm looking at the roster, man, and you played with Dale Ellis, you played with Xavier McDaniel, you played with Tom Chambers, your rookie year. 3 guys that all averaged over 20 points a game. I mean, just what was that like, man? You ended up making the all rookie team your first year, but what was that like playing with 3 guys that were such great scorers?
Man, that was great for me, man, because I didn't have a whole lot of pressure on me to come in and be that guy. I could sit behind those guys and learn stuff and not have that pressure, and learn from some of the best in the league at the time. They don't get any tougher than Xavier. You didn't get as versatile of a guy as Tom Chambers at the time. And Dale Ellis is one of the best shooters of all time. He don't get enough credit, but just sitting behind those guys. And then, Nate McMillan was there. So sitting back and watching those guys and learning different things about being in the league and playing and practicing and, preparing, I think it was great for me. I remember when I first got to Seattle, I think X did this to a lot of people who were playing pickup. So X would test you early on to see how tough you were.
Yeah.
And I guess I passed the test. You just couldn't back down. I think a lot of guys back down. And I think after I passed that test, I think I was good with X. Like, okay.
Right. What did he do specifically to you? What was the test?
There wasn't no punk in here. Let's put it like that. I think, like I said, X would test you, and X was a physical guy, and you just can't back down. And I think
I consider, Gas, when I think about X-Man, I consider X the Marshawn Lynch of Seattle basketball. He was the Marshawn Lynch of the Sonics, and I think that's why people love him. So he laid his heart out there on the line. Mm-hmm. Everybody remembers him choking Wes Matthews, and I'm like you, D. For some reason, he always liked me, man. So he never tried to punk me either. What I was always excited about.
He was on with us. He talked about Wes Matthews, and he said it was like a year later he runs into Wes Matthews. He sees Wes Matthews. I want to say it was at a club in Atlanta, and he goes up to him to apologize, and Wes Matthews didn't want to talk to him and didn't want to accept his apology, and X is like, okay, and then that was it. Like they never talked again.
Mm-hmm.
D, tell me this, man. So we're talking about 87, the year you were drafted. This is going to bring back a lot of memories for Sonic fans. It's probably going to bring back some bad feelings because Olden Polynice was your teammate. I remember meeting you and OP at the same time. I love OP, great guy. But the Sonics had the 5th pick. They drafted Scottie Pippen, but then traded him to Chicago. Now, I'm pretty sure you like me. Even though I knew who you were, I had no damn idea who Scottie Pippen was because he played at a real small school, Central Arkansas. But were you aware of what type of player he was and what was the vibe amongst the players? I'm talking about it in 87, 88, when Scottie was traded and you guys ended up getting Olden Polynice.
Like you, I had no idea who he was. Okay. And I think probably half the guys didn't know who he was either on the team. So obviously that's something that the teams do, and they know talent that we don't know about. And like you said, we didn't see Central Arkansas. I hadn't heard of this kid. I hadn't seen him at any like the camps or USA basketball or anything like this. So it was a mystery to us. And I think Sonic just got what they needed or thought they needed as far as Olden being a center. And then later on getting me also. So, that's what that was.
D, that's kind of what I read. I don't think anybody knew Scottie Pippen was going to turn into the fantastic player that he was, a top 50 player of all time. And at the time, the Lakers, I guess, was you guys' biggest problem. Magic, Kareem, James Worthy, but also the Houston Rockets at that time had Akeem Olajuwon. I'm not sure if Ralph Sampson was still on the team, but from what I've heard and read, one of the reasons that they wanted to get OP was because, Kareem and Dream. Now, Olden's 6'10", 6'11". I think Olden, I know he played at Virginia. I think they may have made the Final Four. So that's some of the thought process behind why they chose him. But tell me, I just remember you being one of the most versatile defenders, man. And one of the things that I always admired about your game was you could guard the point guard through the 5-man. I mean, that's pretty damn rare, but that was your game. Talk to me about you guys' matchups in the playoffs with the Lakers, and did you ever have the assignment of trying to guard Magic Johnson?
I tell kids today when I do camps and stuff, is if you can play defense, you're gonna play at some point during the game. You're going to play. Shot going to leave you. If you can play defense, you're going to be in the game at some point. Back then, with the Sonics, I think I played on like one of the more versatile teams that I played on because we could switch everything. And when Cage was playing at center, we had Sean at the 4, and then myself, GP, and Nate, or whoever, or even Dale Ellis at the 2. We could switch everything down the line. Playing against the Lakers, that was a good thing for us. I mean, we could switch the 1, 2, and the 3. A word that may have caused more of a matchup problem sometimes on the smaller guys, but we could switch, pretty much everywhere on any team. And I did get to play Magic some, and I think for me playing defense is like somebody who's more offensive minded. They get a thrill out of scoring. So for me, I get a thrill out of stopping somebody. That's just as much fun to me as stopping somebody than it probably is for somebody that's just trying to score.
Well, and, moving ahead a little in terms of the coaches, and no disrespect to Bernie and KC, who had great NBA careers and did a lot, but that was the kind of thing I think that made you such a player that George would like. Talk about George's arrival, because you guys on the floor, you were okay. But then he gets there in 91 or actually early 92. You upset Golden State that year. You get to the conference finals the next year. What was George like when he arrived, and what was it about him that got you guys really going as a team?
I think it's probably more for Gary and Sean. And after watching an interview with them, I think they're the ones that got Casey up out of there.
Yeah.
They wanted a different voice, and I think George catered to them in different ways. Style of play, the way that they communicated with each other, and I think you could get away with that with those guys. Not for everybody. And George has brought a different attitude to the team. Obviously, we had to make up, and the team that George can come in and coach the way that he wanted to coach. Again, we had versatility everywhere. And I think that's something that George liked. And, like I said, he came in as a different voice, a voice that Sean and GP did well with.
Yeah, I George would say that too, that when he got there were guys, Nate McMillan, Derrick McKey, guys who'd been in the league 5 and 6 years, kind of knew what their business was, and that Gary and Sean were the two guys. That's what you're saying, right? That George was necessary, maybe, or George's biggest strength was harnessing the raw talent of those guys and turning them into NBA players. A lot of guys have talent and don't make it in the NBA. Those two had the talent, and then he kind of showed them the way to make it. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, George bringing his guys along, Tim Gergerich, and how hard he worked with Gary, Sean also, I think it was a big part of their success. And like I said, George just being George, allowing those guys to be themselves and, pull the reins back when he needed to, but just let them do their thing for the most part.
Derrick McKey is our guest on Iconic Sonics. I need to mention this because if I don't, I'll be in trouble here at home. Without question, my lovely wife, Renee's all-time favorite Seattle Supersonics player, and she'd go far to say all-time favorite Indiana Pacers player. She was a heavy D fan from day one, saw what you brought, and if I didn't bring that up, I'd be in trouble here, Derrick. So she loved you, and we love having you on, man. It's great to have you. We will pause and then come back and talk about the 92-93 conference finals, the trade to Indiana, and then an unbelievable run with the Pacers for 6 or 7 years in Indianapolis. Iconic Sonics is brought to you by Swinomish Casino and Lodge and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. Iconic Sonics is proudly supported by Swinomish Casino and Lodge, and they're proud partners with Iconic Sonics. They're located on beautiful Padilla Bay, just north of Seattle. Casino, lodge, dining, entertainment, and more. Swinomish Casino and Lodge provides a perfect getaway for relaxation. A full-service entertainment destination, including a 98-room luxury lodge, multi-purpose event center, and casino, open daily from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. with a great mix of slot machines and Las Vegas-style table games. And for the food connoisseur, check out the 13 Moons Dining Experience, one of the finest in the area, a beautiful restaurant with cuisine designed to enhance the flavors of the Northwest. Swinomish Casino and Lodge, check out the best casino in the area with the most outstanding customer service, offering a luxuriant, state-of-the-art experience while maintaining and upholding the cultural identity of the Swinomish tribe. Swinomish Casino and Lodge. Find out more at SwinomishCasinoandLodge.com. That's SwinomishCasinoandLodge.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Iconic Sonics is fed by Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. What can I tell you about Dick's food that you don't already know? Probably nothing. They're a Seattle legend for serving great burgers, great fries, great shakes. What I can tell you that you might not know is Dick's also has a cool t-shirt now that salutes the 95-96 NBA Finals Sonics team. Take a look at the Sonics t-shirts available through Dick's at Dick's Drive-Ins, their Twitter feed at Dick's Drive-Ins. You'll see the photos. You'll buy the shirt. You'll be happy. Thanks to Dick's Drive-In Restaurants for the support on Iconic Sonics. And our nonprofit sponsor on Iconic Sonics is the Run Freely Foundation, a 501c3 organization founded by our friend Kenny Main. It raises money to help financially support veterans who need limb salvage, medical care, and rehabilitation. Years ago, Kenny suffered a catastrophic ankle injury, and after years of pain, he found relief with treatment in 2017 that got him both walking and running again pain-free. With that discovery, Kenny wanted to help others in pain, and the Run Freely Foundation was born to help provide the care he received to those who cannot afford to cover its costs. You can find out more and get involved with this great organization at runfreely.org. The Run Freely Foundation, proud sponsor of Iconic Sonics. Derrick McKey is our guest today on Iconic Sonics, a great member of the Sonics for, 6 or 7 years, and certainly the last year, 92-93, a member of one of the great all-time Sonics teams. It got to Game 7 against Phoenix. We're going to talk about that with Heavy D, Right E, Heavy D. What you weren't Heavy E. Nobody called you Heavy E. What was Heavy D, huh?
No, and I'm trying to figure out where Heavy D comes from. So Derrick, if you could give us a little background on the nickname Heavy, because Bruce Lloyd still calls you Heavy Tail today. Michael Caine still calls you Heavy Tail today. So where did this nickname Heavy come from the 6'9", 6'10" skinny guy from Meridian, Mississippi?
Hey, it's crazy. I think most people don't really know. A lot of people think it's defense and this and that, but this is where it came from. Avery Johnson, when he was with the team.
Avery?
So, yeah. So Bruce Lloyd and I went to visit Avery in the off season one year. So we go to New Orleans and we go there, we just hang out, whatever. So I rent a car. I think it's like a Ford Taurus or whatever. So we show up, and when we see Avery says to me, he said, "Well, look at you. Aren't you just living large? Living large like Heavy D." So he started calling me Heavy. So that's where it came from.
Because of the Ford Taurus.
Ford Taurus. And Avery thought I was living large. Heavy, you living large, Heavy. So,
that's a man, D. I'm telling you, man. For 35 years, I've been scratching my head, going, "Where the hell does this nickname Heavy come from?" Oh, what a great story!
Hey, like I said, people think it's D, like Heavy D, defense. Nah, it's
Heavy D the rapper. I got you.
Heavy D.
You could have given me 500 guesses. I don't think I would have included a Ford Taurus. That's a hell of a story. That 92-93 team, Derrick, in Seattle, it's one of my all-time favorite teams. You guys are coming together under George. The talent is really rising to the top. So many guys contributing. Your defense was incredible. And then you get into the playoffs. It looks like Utah is going to handle you in the first round in Game 5, and then you guys turn it around in the second half of Game 5 and beat them. A classic 7-game series with Houston, a classic 7-game series with Phoenix. Talk about that spring of 93. That was your first taste of a deep NBA playoff run. What are your memories of that team and that time?
Well, first thing I think of, that we were a real confident team. We thought and knew we could beat any of those teams that we played. Yeah, they had some special players on those teams, but we felt like we were good enough to beat anybody. And I think we showed that. And, you know, we met up against a team of Phoenix, the Phoenix team, who were playing well at the time. They had Barkley, and, you know, we gave them a run for their money. It's tough to beat a team if they shoot 50-some free throws. But, yeah, I think confidence was the biggest thing. And, you know, we felt like, especially after getting past Utah, you know, felt like we can beat anybody. The Houston team, anybody over in the West.
Eldridge, let me ask you, because George Karl still maintains this, but nobody can pin it down. All the players involved maintain it, that there was something wrong that day in Phoenix when all those fouls get called on the Sonics in Game 7. You saw the game. Do you buy into whatever the conspiracy theory is that the NBA wanted the Suns versus the Bulls? 64 free throws. Are you kidding me? It's still the all-time record in an NBA game. Do you think it was just bad officiating? Was there something more to it? You're as close as we have to a neutral guy here, Eldridge. What do you think happened?
You're going to put me on the spot with it. Put me on the spot. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I've never heard of that amount of fouls. That's insane. But, you know, George Karl did some illegal stuff in his day, too, because when I was with the Rockets in 95, 96, I'd be damned if they didn't zone us up and the refs never called it. So what comes around goes around, guys. I want to ask Derrick this, though. D, I know you were in Seattle. I don't know how often you come back out to the Pacific Northwest, but I know last year you were here for the battle in Seattle when Alabama played Gonzaga. And I just want to ask you, what's your fondest memory of playing for the Sonics or just being in the city of Seattle?
I don't know if a fondest memory, but you know, I played with some great guys, and I love the city. You know, just a combination of all that, you know. You know, and you know what? I didn't know how great the city was until I left. And now that I've been back, and I was like, I didn't experience some of the things that I should have experienced while I was there. I was playing ball, I was being young, and I was doing what young people do. I just think the city has so many things to offer. And I just didn't get the experience in, which I don't think a lot of players do. Because once you're playing, and you're not there to experience the things that the city offers or brings or whatever. But it was a great time, great friendships that'll last a long time, a lifetime. But yeah, I mean, the special moments are the special moments, going to the conference finals and, playing in some of the big games and playing against some of the iconic teams on the West Coast and some of the best players that played the game. So it's a combination of things.
Let me ask you this, D. I mentioned you came for the Battle of Seattle, Alabama, and Gonzaga. What was your impression of Climate Players Arena?
I think it was great. I didn't get to walk around and see everything, but I did see a lot. The tickets were high as a mug. I was like,
wait a minute, man! You had to buy tickets. You're University of Alabama Hall of Famer, SEC Player of the Year. What you mean the tickets was high?
They took care. They took care of me, but I looked into it. Like, is this a finals championship game or something? With these tickets, like, yeah, I don't want to pay this, but yeah, Bama took care of me. So, but everybody can't afford tickets like that. But I get it. Gonzaga is a big ticket, and for me, it's just an opportunity to come back to Seattle, and then icing on the cake is to get to watch Alabama play against Gonzaga. I hadn't been back to the city in a while, so it's grown a lot since I've been there.
Yes,
Derrick, one of Eddie Johnson, I talked to Eddie years ago about this, and he lamented breaking up that 93 team. Now, NBA teams make moves all the time, and most teams do make some kind of a move. But at the end of 93, you guys take Phoenix right to the end of Game 7, and we could argue that with proper officiating, you might have won that game, and you might have gone to the finals. Very good team, still pretty young, but they elect to take Eddie and Dana Barros and trade for Kendall Gill. And then a few months later, one of the biggest trades in this city's history, Detlef Schrempf comes back to the city of Seattle, and you go to Indiana. Both franchises benefit. Seattle has a great run. Indiana has a great run. You have a great time in Indianapolis. Really looks like a perfect trade. And you can't spend time in your life lamenting things that didn't happen. I understand that. But do you ever wonder what would have happened if they'd kept that 93 team together? Maybe one more year, maybe one more season with you, right, and with Eddie and Ricky and all that gang, and see what would have happened.
I think our chances of going back to the conference finals would have been really good. Like I said, at that point, we were confident enough where we felt like that we could beat any team in the West. And another full year together with George in that group, who knows what would have happened. They did well, very well the next year. And I think, I think it pretty much came down to George wanted his type of guys, his type of players. And I don't blame anybody for wanting somebody that they felt like they can communicate with better or fits his types of schemes or what have you. So, maybe that's why he did things he did. And like you said, it worked out for both teams.
You get to Indianapolis. I just want to ask you about the two Larrys. You play for two Hall of Famers, two guys who won a few games. Larry Bird more as a player, but he won some as a coach. Larry Brown is thought of more as a coach, but way back in the day, he won some as a player too. Talk about those two guys, about Larry Brown and Larry Bird, and the differences. Maybe who you liked better, or who you didn't like, or just what those two guys were like during the 6 years you played for them.
Right. Larry Brown is probably one of my favorite coaches of all time. Just his overall approach and attitude about the game on and off the court. You kind of feel like it's a college atmosphere. off the court and on the court. He wants everybody to be the best that they could be. He wants everybody to participate. He wants everybody to give everybody a chance to score or do whatever. So, and he kind of treats everybody the same. Obviously, you treat the stars a little different, but I think he's kind of like Popovich. He treats everybody the same. He's going to get on Reggie just like he gets on everybody else.
Mm.
But, like I say, he's one of my favorite coaches. Bird, obviously a player's coach, kind of coached in the style of maybe a football coach. He has an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and he just makes the substitution and put everything together. So, and that's the difference. But, and then with Bird, you didn't have to do a whole lot. Had Mark Jackson at the point. So I think it made it a little easier on him also. But both worked well for both coaches. Like I said, we had some good teams and good talent, and they just put it together and threw us out there, and we did the rest.
So D, you 93, you go to Indiana, and before I ask you, because I want to ask you about the comparison of, I think when everybody thinks of Indiana Pacers, they think of Reggie Miller. But I just want to say this, man. I remember playing you guys my rookie year when I was with the Houston Rockets. This was 95, 96. And I think it's the only time in my life where I didn't want to get in the game. I mean, it was early in the season, but the goddamn game was so intense. I was like, Lord, please don't let me get in this game. I mean, you guys had Rick Smits, you had Dale Davis, you had Antonio Davis, and you had this crazy dude named Adrian Caldwell. Anytime somebody came in the lane, Adrian Caldwell just knocked the hell out of him. But you had Hayward Workman in the backcourt, you had Reggie Miller in the backcourt, and of course you had Mark Jackson. But Hayward Workman was picking up Kenny Smith and Sam Cassell full court like they said something about his mama, man. I was like, Lord, please don't let me get in this game. Because I think whenever somebody think about the Pacers, they think Reggie Miller, three-pointers, finesse. But you guys were a really tough team. Where did that mindset come from?
Well, that's kind of how we played. In the transition for me coming from the West Coast going to the East Coast, in Indiana, we weren't playing it up and down pace like we were in Seattle, running gun. It was just grind and be physical and hit people and touch people up. You can go to the basket, you're going to get hit. Wasn't no dancing and doing all this because, again, you're going to get hit. But we played a more physical style, more methodical, try to come down and run plays. We had Big Rick, so we could throw it down to Rick and play from that. And obviously you had Reggie. But, yeah, in the East then, it was just physical. Chicago, and you had Detroit. I think they were kind of winding down, but they still were formidable back then with Mahorn and all those guys, and Rodman and those guys. And Milwaukee was a physical team back then, and obviously New York with the guys they had. So you had to be physical.
I think when people think of physical teams, I think that obviously they think of the Pistons, the Bad Boys with Isaiah, Joe Dumars, Lambeer, Rick Mahorn, the Knicks with Patrick Ewing, Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley. I'm not lying, man. I remember looking over at Chucky Brown. We had Elijah Wan and we had Clyde Drexler, but I remember looking over at Chucky Brown saying, damn, Chucky, I hope I don't get in this game, man. This is a physical game. But talk a little bit about Reggie Miller. You're one of the guys that played with two of the greatest shooters of all time. You mentioned Dale Ellis, how you don't think he gets enough credit. Everybody honors and gives Reggie credit. What's two of the similarities and maybe some of the differences between the two great shooters in Dale Ellis and Reggie Miller?
There's a lot of similarities. Obviously, both can shoot. Obviously, can both shoot with range. Both of them, neither one of them could dribble more than 2 times. So. Reggie played better defense than Dale.
Okay.
Dale could post up.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that Dale did more post up. I think Dale played center in college.
Played center at Tennessee, yeah, in college. Yeah.
So, but similar. I mean, they both shot the ball well, and they both were pretty confident. They both would talk trash. Yeah, I mean, and I think about, and it's a little bit off the subject, but with Reggie, you have a lot of the guys and a lot of people, they put on all these teams and all this and all that. And I compare people when you're putting them on these top 75, top 50s or what have you. My thing is can that individual carry a franchise? And I know Reggie could carry a franchise.
Yeah.
Some of those guys I know couldn't carry a franchise. So that's where I separate Reggie from a lot of those guys. You got a lot of guys making all these teams, but I don't think I know a lot of those guys couldn't carry a franchise, and that's what Reggie did.
No, I hear you. I think obviously our careers overlapped. I played against you when you were with the Indiana Pacers, and I think a lot like my teams when we were in Atlanta, we had Dikembe Mutombo, Christian Laettner, Steve Smith, Mookie Blaylock. We couldn't beat the Bulls, and I think that was probably you guys' problem too. But talk about the matchup with the Bulls, playing against Michael. I mean, it was headline Reggie against Michael, but I don't know who you ended up battling against. I don't know if it was Dennis or, Will Perdue or, or some of the other guys. But talk about you guys in the series against the Bulls.
Those were a great series because you're playing against obviously one of the best players of all time, and obviously Scottie Pippen, one of the great players of all time. You have Rodman and Ron Harper, who doesn't get credit for his contributions to that team. You had Kukoc, obviously Steve Kerr at one point. So playing as a talented team, and it was definitely a battle. And again, in Indiana, we were confident that we could beat any team. We felt like we could beat Chicago. And I think that's the attitude you have to have. I think the year they had their record, their record. I think we won. I think we were only one of the few teams that beat them. We may have beat them twice that year. But we felt pretty confident, But at the end of the day, you had that black cat.
I gotta ask you this, D, since you mentioned the black cat. Almost every argument now, I think LeBron's a fantastic player. Every time I hear, is he better than Mike? I'm like, come on, man. And I'm gonna give you the reason why I consider Mike to be better, because for me, D, there's always some guys, the George Gervings. I think Steve Smith is in that category. Fantastic offensive players. You talked about Dale Ellis, fantastic offensive player, but didn't play much D. The reason I got so much respect for Mike is not only was he the best offensive player, but I think he was one of the best defensive players as well. Who do you see, if you had to pick a guy for the GOAT, between LeBron and Mike, who are you going with?
My thing about that is you got to give me a definition of the GOAT. This is what I say about Mike and LeBron. If I'm starting a team, I'm going with LeBron.
Okay.
If I want a shot, I'm going with MJ.
You want to win the game. Who you going with?
I'm going with MJ.
I think you're always going to default to the guys you played with too, and that maybe is why MJ. But I got to say that '98 Game 7 between the Pacers and the Bulls. I'm born in Indianapolis, lifetime Pacers fan. That game broke my heart, but I thought it was maybe the greatest NBA game I ever saw. That Game 7 was spectacular that year, and the Bulls end up winning it. Derrick, it's awesome to see you again and to chat with you. What do you think of our rookie co-host? This is Eldridge's first effort. Was he any good? Would you keep him? Would you keep him on the team?
Yep.
We'll keep him around. We'll let you get rolling, get the Taurus down to the Jiffy Lube and get it clean up and shine. An all-timer as far as Sonics fans are concerned. It's great to catch up with you again, Derrick. I hope we can do this again. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
D, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks to our guest, Derrick McKey, and for Eldridge Recasner, I'm Mike Gastineau. This is Iconic Sonics. It's brought to you by Swinomish Casino and Lodge and Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. And for more information on our show, you can go to iconicsonics.com. We'll see you next time.